All right, good evening. We'll come back into open session here at 7:14, and we've already gone through A, B, and C. We will go back into closed session after this next one, but if we would all rise for Agenda D for the Pledge of Allegiance and the National Anthem. The National Anthem is being sung this evening by the Round Rock High School Legacy Showstoppers.
So first, leading us in pledges this evening is Round Rock High School student Anna Kosh. She is a member of the Round Rock High School Legacy Showstoppers Choir. Y'all missed quite the concert. They're amazing, but you'll get to hear them sing the National Anthem here in just a second.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets ramparts the bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
As they're leaving, I just want to mention that the Showstoppers and Legacy Choirs are under the direction of Jamison McGafferty and Reagan Grantham.
Great job. Great job. Hey. Oh, no. Great job. Great job. Awesome. Great job. That's awesome. Great job. Great job. Great job. Yes. Thank you.
I meant to say the Jamison McCafferty and Reagan Grantham are the under direction. So thank you all for being here. So, all right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Thank you. That was wonderful. We will go to agenda item E, adoption of minutes. And then we're going to go to recognition of anybody lights and make a motion on that if I'm getting to my.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the minutes for the board meeting held on February 28th and March 12th and 14th, 2019 as presented.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for the meetings February 28th, March 12th, and 14th, 2019 as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 7-0. We'll go to agenda item F, board recognitions and introductions for March. Dr. Flores.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board and community, definitely we're a few days away from April, if you can believe it. Students, can you believe how fast it's gone? And it's been a great year, so we do have some staff and student recognition, so I'll call up Jenny Lacoste Caputo to lead us through this item.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. Good evening, President Chadwell, trustees. Tonight we're going to honor 3 of Round Rock ISD's outstanding athletes who also happen to be among the best in Texas. If the trustees and Dr. Flores could join us in front of the dais, please. Round Rock ISD scored several top honors at the state UIL swim meet held in February. Round Rock High School junior Vincent Ribeiro earned the title of state champion in the 200-yard boys individual medley and placed second in the boys 100-yard breaststroke. Also from Round Rock High School, Adam Haig finished third in the boys 100-yard breaststroke. Westwood High School sophomore Kian Trung took home third place in the girls' 50-yard free. Please join me in welcoming Vincent, Adam, and Kian. And I'd like to mention that Round Rock High School's swim team coach is Tom Arredondo. Matt Groff is principal. Westwood High School's swim team coach is Matthew McBrearty, and Mario Acosta is the principal.
Get chairs in the center for a photo.
And students, if you kind of come to the center, we'll get a picture for you.
Hey guys, if y'all please look over here. On 3, 1, 2. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Job well done. And that's all we have for you tonight.
Okay. All right. For just a quick update, we need to go back into closed session and finish. We wanted to come out here, do the national anthem, get the students home so they could go get home and study tonight. But we are going to go back into closed session and finish a discussion on agenda item 2, Government Code 551.072 and 071 regarding legal advice on land. So I've already made those statements, so we're going to go back in. It's now 7:20. Welcome back. On 7:55, we are coming out of closed session. We have no action coming out. With that, we'll go to agenda item G, public communications. I'm going to read this again quickly. At each regular meeting, the board will set aside 20 minutes to afford the general public an opportunity to speak to the board regarding matters of concern or interest to the district, other than the character of any student or staff or board member. Concerns, complaints regarding the specific individual should not be raised in public forum. They should be considered separately according to applicable board policies. The board requests that comments on any subject, whether positive or negative, be courteous and respectful. At the time of the 20-minute limit is reached, the board will proceed to other business, and persons who have not yet spoken will be rescheduled to the latter part of the meeting, the public communication section. I'd like to remind the audience that the viewers that the comments of the speakers reflect their own positions or opinions. The board is not allowed to discuss or act upon any matter that is not listed under the action item portion of the agenda. Therefore, board members may not discuss the comments of speakers. Please understand that a lack of response from board members does not indicate agreement or approval of the comments. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the board. A spokesperson for the group shall be allowed 5 minutes to speak. Vice President Gonzalez of the board will be a designated timekeeper and give you a 30-second notice when that. So we have a handful, I think 7, 8 speakers. I think everybody is speaking individually, so it'll be 3 minutes. And with that, I'll call up, the first is Robin Durton, and after that will be Trip Seabold. So, Ms. Durton. Use your time. Your phone.
Good evening. I'm a parent of a Round Rock High School graduate from 2006 and a current Round Rock High School junior. I'm here today to speak out about the abuse of our children at the hands of the police. It has become increasingly obvious to myself and to many others in the community that the district can no longer distinguish between children's behavioral issues and criminal behavior. By default, the police see all bad behavior as criminal, and they have no place in our schools. When did it become appropriate to criminalize children for acting like children? Why are you okay with kids being intimidated and dehumanized? Kids have been getting into fights at school since the beginning of school. These are children, and they shouldn't have to face criminal charges for taking a few pennies of animal crackers or getting slammed to the concrete for getting into a fight and mouthing off to you. Police have no place in the Round Rock ISD board meetings either, but yet they're here too. It creates an atmosphere of intimidation and implied threat. Why do you need police to protect you from the speech of parents. You've heard the numbers. They're your numbers, they're the district numbers, but I'll repeat them again. In 2016, black students made up 8.7% of Round Rock ISD, yet received 33% of the discretionary discipline. In 2015, black and Latinx students made up 40% of the district enrollment, but were subjected to 55% of referrals to law enforcement. This is beyond unacceptable. Only a fool would deny that this is driven by racism. Stop criminalizing children. Look past the boot you're licking and see that is standing on the necks of our children. Get the cops out of our schools.
Thank you, Ms. Durden. Next will be Tripp Seabold. After that will be Iris Trenay. Trenay. Mr. Seabold.
Good evening, trustees, community members, and superintendent. My name is Tripp Seabold. I retired just after I turned 37. I graduated from Round Rock High School in 1998 as valedictorian. When I was 16 years old, I attempted to take my own life, twice. I suffered from feelings of angst and nihilism, and I didn't speak to anybody about my feelings. My younger brother, Sean Seabold, graduated from here in 2000. Yesterday would have been his 37th birthday. Though my family doesn't know if his death was an accident or intentional, we're fairly certain that he took his own life. For anyone listening who's suffering, I want you to know that your feelings are okay. Whatever it is that you're feeling, that's okay. What's not okay is to not talk about it with anybody. Find someone, anyone, that you can trust and just have them listen without judgment. There are many people who care. Parents, be on guard. Nobody's exempt. Suicide knows no boundaries. Be proactive. Familiarize yourself with the Columbia Protocol, and don't be afraid to ask these series of questions to assess risk. Trustees, be that trustee, the one who champions mental health initiatives. The public will absolutely support you when you vote to increase spending and funding for mental health initiatives in our schools. The decisions made here and in school districts all across the country will plant the seeds for which kind of society we cultivate in the future. Will we have a highly connected and supportive society or a police state? I wish you and your families prosperous, long lives.
Thank you, Mr. Seabold. Next up is Iris Trenay. I think I've said this before. And then after that will be Hannah Friedman.
Hello. My name is Iris Trines.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm a member of Educators in Solidarity, and I'm speaking on behalf of the educator in Round Rock who is afraid to speak up in fear of repercussions. Hello. Serving as a Black educator for nearly a decade in Round Rock ISD has been a lonely journey. As I attempt to recall the countless experiences of intimidation, microaggressions, and exclusion in the workplace by leaders in various capacities, race is the common denominator. Over time, I found myself becoming silent about my experiences, unsure of who I could trust. This is a heavy load and too much of a burden to bear. Understand, I work alongside, teach for, and navigate within a learning community that doesn't share my culture and experiences. I recognize that I've suppressed those moments in order to cope and make it from one year to the next. Black people, Black culture, and Black experiences of students, teachers, and families matter. Rarely do I see leaders that are representative of my culture and traditions present. I experienced trauma during my first year of teaching in Round Rock ISD in an attempt to serve students and families in this district. My undergraduate program failed to provide necessary training on restorative practices, attention to social emotional learning, and the issues surrounding race that occur daily on school campuses at Round Rock ISD. This is why it is critical to provide a district-wide training without the assumption that alternative certification programs, undergraduate and graduate programs are doing the necessary work. All staff connected to our students deserve to receive the appropriate training to better serve our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up will be Hannah Friedman, then after that will be Shana Wynn. Shana Wynn.
Good evening. I'm Hannah. I'm a member of Educators in Solidarity, and I'm reading this letter on behalf of a Round Rock ISD teacher who wishes to remain anonymous. Dear Board of Trustees, I have been privileged enough to work as an educator in Round Rock ISD for over a decade. During my tenure, I have experienced the many joys of education. I have witnessed students overcome overwhelming obstacles such as the diagnosis of a chronic illness to a life-changing car accident to one of the most difficult things that I, as an adult, have ever had to go through, the loss of a best friend, to suicide. I've shaken the hands of students at graduation who could have easily fallen through the cracks. These joys were all made possible by members of this community who invested so deeply in the education of our students. From the parent who emailed me every other day requesting updates on their students' progress to the hall monitor who greeted every student with a warm smile in the morning. And yet, in spite of all these joys, I know there is room for improvement. It is something I ask of my students, not just in our content area, but also in life as a citizen of the world, to have a growth mindset to be better. The joys of education are many, but the challenges exacerbated by racial inequity are just as abundant. The symptoms of racial inequity can be heard in the testimonies of our students of color. When we listen, the lack of equity is clear, but of course, listening is a choice. Surely the student must have misread the situation. Surely that's not what the teacher meant to say. Surely the student is just being dramatic and imagining things. After all, kids these days are so into PC culture that they don't know how to take a joke. What do we gain as a community when we listen to our students? What do we lose when we do not? The signs of racial inequity are not just anecdotal. The patterns exist within our statistics, the overrepresentation of black boys in discipline referrals, the achievement gap among populations by race. We constantly talk about data, but we do so with a colorblind lens, assuming that poverty, not race, is the common denominator. We try to throw money at the problem, hoping it will go away, only to find there will never be enough money. There will never be enough money to fix a broken system. There will never be enough money to change what's in the heart of others until we get to the core of the problem. The status quo will remain unchanged. Our work is not done. We have to grow. We have to be better. We have to be better because our students, our community, our nation, and the world deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Shana Wynn, and then after that is Megan Williams.
Hello, I am a member of Educators in Solidarity, and I am reading a letter on behalf of a Round Rock ISD educator who is also a parent of 2 children who attend Round Rock ISD. I am an educator in Round Rock ISD. In the next couple of years, I will have 2 boys at Round Rock High School, 2 boys who are black. I hear so many wonderful things about opportunities my children will have at Round Rock High School and experiences they will have while there. But a common experience I continue to hear from families of other black students troubles me. Numerous families have shared that their children hear the N-word on a daily basis from other students, in hallways, at lunch, even in classrooms. Now, as an educator, I know that all student speech cannot be controlled, particularly when adults are not within earshot. But what I do know is that school teachers can create a culture that makes certain language unacceptable. I do know that student reports about having inappropriate language directed at them should be taken seriously and dealt with. I fear Round Rock High School has created a culture where the N-word is acceptable, where perhaps even black students have been socialized to accept hearing the word. One argument I hear is that the word appears in song lyrics, so it's hard to argue that students shouldn't be allowed to say it. There are a lot of words in song lyrics that we would not allow in an educational setting. Does Round Rock High School allow girls to be called the B word or be referred to in sexual ways they are in song lyrics? I certainly hope not, and have not heard of that behavior being allowed. Students know it's not okay because that's the culture the school leaders have established. Did you notice that in my letter I said the N-word instead of typing out the word to be read aloud? I did not want this horrid word to be said on camera at a board meeting because so many people find it offensive. So if it's too offensive to be said in a public board meeting, why is it okay for our children to be forced to endure frequently hearing a word that attacks their very humanity? Why are student and parent reports and complaints not taken seriously? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nguyen. Next up is Megan Williams, and then after that will be Janet Wilson.
Hi, my name is Megan. I'm a member of Educators in Solidarity, and I'll be speaking on behalf of another teacher at Round Rock ISD. It seems that I was hired as the black teacher to teach all of the black and Hispanic underserved students. At the job fair, I saw a few other black or minority attendees, so I was weary to apply. Upon being hired, it felt like I could speak about anything, as long as I don't speak about race. I am generally regarded as fair, but with high expectations, and my exams have often been identified as being difficult, but in comparison to my peers who have fewer black and Hispanic students due to their teaching upper-level math courses, the data which compares us is race-based. I've even heard peers say that the numbers say they teach black students better than the black teachers because 100% of their 2 black students pass the DCA/STAR. I am regarded as knowledgeable in my fields of study, as possessing strong classroom management and facilitation skills. In the context of my teaching, I expose students to a range of ideas and multiple lenses for critiquing and analyzing information, not just the scope of worksheets and district common assessment. Students may forget the bulk of the classroom content, but I hope that the unique manner that my subject is taught to them from a black woman who is a double minority in her field is an acknowledged benefit to them. White faculty members are unaware of the myths they carry regarding multiculturalism and inclusion. They tend to feel that the racism is a myth with the support of only a few stories of success. The failure to recognize racism's contemporary manifestations with the subtle comments, the questions, the challenges, the racialized markers of interactions ignores what many students experience. When students or faculty of color experience racism on campus, they seldom have the option of addressing the issue or even discussing it with their white colleagues, simply because most of their colleagues do not believe that it exists. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Janet Wilson, and after that is Heidi Goldman.
Hello. My name is Janet Wilson, and I have 2 sons with dyslexia who were identified in late middle school through private testing. It is estimated that 20% of the U.S. population is dyslexic. In the 2016 to 2017 school year, Round Rock ISD only identified 3.7% of its students as dyslexic. Based on the estimated prevalence of dyslexia, Round Rock ISD is failing 16% of its students by not identifying their dyslexia. The critical period for literacy development is before 8 years of age. If intervention for dyslexia is not provided before the age of 8, the probability of reading difficulties continuing into high school is 75%. This makes it so important to identify and support these kids before 3rd grade. In the 2016 to 2017 Round Rock ISD school district, had 10,520 students enrolled in kinder through second grade. Of those students, they only identified 77 students as dyslexic. So instead of 20%, only 0.7% of the Round Rock ISD students were identified in those important school years for literacy development. The percentiles of students identified in Round Rock ISD as dyslexic suggest that most students are identified in 4th through 7th grade. This is well beyond the ideal age to provide meaningful intervention, and often in middle school where strong interventions are not available on campus. While the district is now mandated to screen for dyslexia in kinder and first grade, Round Rock ISD needs to plan to identify students in dyslexia in its older students as well. I expressed my concern to my son's teachers throughout the years, and although there were obvious signs of dyslexia along the way, their teachers did not recommend testing. I trusted that these teachers were the experts and that I must just be an overly anxious mom. What I know now is that although my sons have had some wonderful teachers, they just don't know the signs of dyslexia and are not empowered to get students help. Most of the teachers who work with students with dyslexia have no idea how our kids struggle, how hard simple things like taking notes are for our kids. My son was struggling to keep up with taking notes in his history class this year. While he has an accommodation that notes be provided for him because of his dyslexia, I had to send 13 emails and bring a dyslexia specialist into a meeting with the teacher to convince her to provide this accommodation. A Round Rock teacher once told me that to have TAG students in her class, she had to have 3 full days of training and an additional full day of training every year after. She had no training to identify students with learning disabilities or have them in her class. If teachers and administrators were well educated about dyslexia, a learning disability that affects 20% of students, they would be able to help Round Rock ISD better identify students. They could better support these students' educational needs in their classroom, and most importantly, they could advocate for students whose parents are not able to. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Next up is Heidi Goldman, and then last speaker will be Paula Royas.
Good evening. My name is Heidi Goldman. I'm one of the organizers of the Round Rock Dyslexia Group. We're a parent organization working with state and nationwide advocacy organizations to develop the best tools and practices for developing literacy programs in local school districts. We know that Round Rock ISD does a lot of great things, which we'll hear more about later tonight. We also have first-class buildings, facilities. My son's entering Round Rock High School next year. We're tremendously excited about the college and work readiness programs he'll get to experience there. So we would like to be part of the movement to develop quality literacy programs that are equal to the excellence of facilities and equipment we provide to every student. 2 weeks ago at your budget meeting, you discussed House Bill 3, which if passes will provide a specific dyslexia allotment for the first time. We're grateful for this funding and the spotlight it places on prioritizing the needs of dyslexic students. But I would like to clarify that to say this is the first time dyslexic student programs will be funded is not accurate. Under the Individuals with Disability Education Act, there has always been funding for dyslexia, which is a specific learning disability. Dyslexic students have been denied placement in special education and the allotment that comes with that placement. The federal investigation of Texas identified that dyslexic students are not being identified or served properly. So if HB 3 does not pass, the lack of funds is not an excuse to limit the identification of dyslexic students, dyslexia instruction, accommodations, or the assistive technology training that they need to be successful in school and beyond. Multiple districts in the state have taken large leaps to improve their services in identifying dyslexic students before second grade. And by adding trained therapists, not interventionists, who work with approved Orton-Gillingham programs with Fidelity with a 1-to-4 ratio. These therapists are called COLTS, which stands for a Certified Academic Language Therapist. Austin ISD has now added 1 COLT on every campus. Frisco ISD has now started a 2-year COLT training program to develop the staff they need. If we are equal, if not better, than these districts in innovation, and together we can make positive changes which are needed. It will not be overnight, but the longer we wait, the longer you leave another generation of students to be underserved, resulting in poor literacy skills, which will affect their long-term future prospects. Additionally, TEA provides grants to improve dyslexia services. TEA is asking for more accountability as to how these funds will be used. They are asking school districts to partner and coordinate with parents and guardians of the students that they serve. We ask for your dedication to working with us to establish a task force to research the strengths and weaknesses of this district's dyslexia services and be willing to work together with transparency and the willingness to make the changes needed for long-term plan of successful literacy for every child in Round Rock ISD. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Goldman. And then finally, Paula Rojas. Rojas, I guess.
Good evening, Dr. Flores, Mr. Chadwell, and Board of Trustees. My name is Paula Rojas, and I have a first and fifth grader at Chandler Oaks. My first grader attended the district's PPCD program at Brushy Creek for his speech impairment and learning disability. After a year and a half in the program, I learned the district had an Apple program. I emailed the district employee and asked why my son wasn't offered or enrolled in that program. I was told behavioral. I was shocked and replied behavioral. All I ever heard of him was how kind he was. He tries really hard, great kid, great helper, follows direction, but never a behavioral issue. All my ARD paperwork and teachers' emails back can back that up. A couple weeks passed when I received word that my son would be able to enter into the Apple program. Teachers started noticing a speech concern. At that point, another program was offered PAIR. He received 3 months of Apple and 2 months of PAIR. I really wish my son could have benefited more from the Apple and the PAIR program. I wish there was more information about the district's programs offered at the time of us entering into the PPCD program. My fear has always been kinder. I know he was delayed and way behind. I asked if he could remain in the Apple and the PAIR program because of his age. He would need to start kinder on time. Kinder rolled around, and we had an amazing, great teacher there at Brushy Creek. I made sure she knew of my son's challenges, and we talked daily about different strategies and approaches. She gave me recommendations, and I'm grateful. My son was identified as being dyslexic a year ago, and I'm thankful because of her, for her listening, for her suggestions, and that he was identified so early. It breaks my heart to see students to have to wait to be identified as being dyslexic. So many months and years, important teaching technologies and accommodation and tools are gone or wasted. My son is severely dyslexic, and I'm sure he will be identified as having more related disorders. I question the ESY services through Round Rock ISD. I was told my son would not qualify. The program is for students that are unable to retain material throughout the year. I checked the district's website on ESY services as it mentions responsible time period, but my question to the district is, what would you consider reasonable? My son has a hard time remembering and saying the letter I. He is entering the second grade and he can't read and write kinder sight words. I know it's up to the members present and on his ARD, but I stand here in front of you today. I know my son. I know he is behind, way behind, and I invite you to visit with him at Chandler. Bring a kindergarten book with you, a stack of sight words. Give him a chance. I stand here before you as a mother of a dyslexic child and as a member of the Round Rock Dyslexia Group. I'm fortunate to fall under SPEDS, but there are members in our group who fight for their child for tools and accommodations under the 504. Special education alone can't solve the achievement gap of kids with disabilities. It takes both general education and special education working together to do that. We got to do a better job as a district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rojas. Thank you all for your patience and your comments. Go to agenda item H, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Flores.
Thank you, Mr. President. We do have one item on the superintendent report tonight, and as we get nearer and nearer to the date of graduation and over 3,500 graduates, our major work that we provide this community and our entire state of Texas is preparing students for college and the world of work. So with that, we'll update you and provide a direct-to-college enrollment and college readiness report by Kathy Malerba and her team.
Good evening, President Chadwell, trustees, and Dr. Flores. We're very happy to be here tonight with you. Here at the mic with me are Michelle Swain, Director of Advanced Academics, and Dr. Laura Darden, who is the Executive Director of Future Readiness. We're here to discuss, of course, college career assessment performance and direct-to-college enrollment. But we're also excited about, even though we're going to keep it brief, this gives us an opportunity to talk not only about the achievement of our students, but of the work of our teachers, counselors, future readiness team, and the engagement of our parents and our community partners, all of whom have a hand in promoting success for our students. And with that, I'm just happy to let you know that Gilbert Zavala from the Austin Chamber, who's been a big part of leading the Direct to College 70 collaborative for many years now, is here with us tonight. But with that, I'll hand it over to Michelle.
Drive for me? Yes. Okay. So we'd like to start off tonight with a few celebrations. And since we just mentioned the Austin Chamber is in the house, they shared their district awards for educational excellence this last October. And Round Rock ISD was recognized for having the highest college readiness rate for a school district in the area. So we're very, very proud of that acknowledgement. And in a follow-up to our AP Performance and Participation Report from the fall, we're proud to share that we were once again named to the College Board AP District Honor Roll for maintaining or improving participation and performance across student groups. This is the second year in a row and third in the last 5 years for Round Rock ISD to receive this honor. Round Rock ISD has made a commitment to ensuring that all students have access to College Board assessments, which include the PSAT 8-9, the PSAT NMSQT in 10th and 11th grade, and the SAT School Day for juniors. These testing opportunities yield data which then provides access to enriching programming, gives students the opportunity to demonstrate readiness for college-level coursework, and impacts college enrollment and scholarship opportunities. The line graphs you see before you reflect the performance of the last two graduating classes on the SAT. Note that in both the evidence-based reading and writing and mathematics, there is an upward trend in performance, and also that Round Rock ISD shows notably higher average scores than both the state and the nation. Looking at student group performance specifically in evidence-based reading and writing, we again note that on average, each of the largest student race and ethnicity groups in Round Rock ISD also outperformed their peers across the state and the nation, and on average, each group scored above the College Ready benchmark score of 480. In looking at our student group performance for mathematics, on average, each of the largest student race ethnicity groups in Round Rock ISD also outperformed their peers across the state and nation. And our white and Asian student groups also scored above the College Ready benchmark of 530. When we combine the results from all of the college readiness opportunities for the class of 2019, the current class, to look at the district-wide college readiness rates, we see that already 80% of current seniors are demonstrating college readiness in reading, with 68% demonstrating college readiness in math and 65% demonstrating college readiness in both. Providing students multiple opportunities to take the TSI assessment is an example of short-term strategies in place to impact this data. A longer-range strategy to impact college readiness in math is to increase the number of students who have access to advanced math programming earlier in their school career. As you may recall from the Stony Point Learning Community presentation last spring, SPLC staff communicated openly with their fifth grade parents and students about the benefits of accessing the advanced math pathway in sixth grade, and they simultaneously opened enrollment in those courses to anyone who would like to take them. As demonstrated in the chart here, they more than doubled their enrollment in sixth grade advanced math classes and are performing commensurate with their peers across the district. Over time, we expect this to have a significant impact on college readiness in math as these students move into middle and high school. Additional opportunities are available to all high school students to help them reach these college readiness levels of performance, including access to the TSI assessment at their home campus, embedded SAT and ACT practice in math and language arts curriculum, access to Princeton Review strategies through evening, weekend, and summer courses, as well as in the College Readiness and Study Skills course and AVID 3, and supporting students to connect their College Board and Khan Academy accounts to access free, individualized resources for targeted SAT practice. Results from College Board research shows that targeted practice helps students raise their scores between the PSAT and the SAT, and that holds true across racial and ethnic groups. We also see the gaps between the student groups shrink somewhat with increased time spent on the official SAT practice. Student time and effort directly impacts their score increases.
We'll now turn to our direct-to-college enrollment results. This chart shares with you the last 5 years of direct-to-college enrollment trends, so that would be the fall immediately after graduation. The green line shows the direct-to-college enrollment rate for students from our comprehensive high schools. The orange line is for all of our seniors, graduating seniors combined. As you can see, there's been an influence on the overall rate because of the increase in the number of graduates at Success High School. So as we continue to lower our dropout rates and bring back more students to earn a high school diploma, that does have an impact on the overall rates, but still very strong, especially at the comprehensive high schools. Some similar nuance here, looking at the enrollment in 2- and 4-year colleges. More than twice as many of our graduates go to 4-year schools than to go to 2-year schools. When you take the Success graduates into account, you get a slight bump with the 2-year rates because they're more likely to attend 2-year schools, and that does pull down the overall 4-year rate just a bit. But again, we're seeing that trend over time generally being positive because of so many students that we're seeing graduate at Success. One of the, we want to share a little bit more research with you that we read as part of our work with the Future Readiness Task Force, and found this research to be quite inspiring and doing a lot to lead our thinking around how we engage with students and their families. So as you can see here, this is a nationwide study of high school students representative of the nation at large. Nearly half of students are indicating that their parents or another family member is their biggest influence in deciding what to do about furthering their education after high school. So that has had a huge impact on our thinking as a task force. Some of the ways that we engage students really do begin to involve our community. The Round Rock ISD College Fair, FAFSA Day, partnerships with our chamber partners, lots of folks rallying around our students to help them make these important decisions and transitions. One that has been substantially supported by the chamber over the years, the Austin Chamber over the years, is the Summer Melt program. Initially, we had a grant that actually funded some of our summer counselors. Those are now locally funded, 1 per high school. And they're there for 6 weeks, right, ladies? To help remove those barriers to enrollment that kids still have stumble with. It can be anything from just completing applications, completing financial aid forms, reminders to go and get their meningitis shot, all kinds of those little details that keep students from progressing and matriculating to college. So we have here the results from last summer showing that we had significant increases in the likelihood of enrolling directly in college for the students who were contacted during the summer melt period.
So as Dr. Malerba mentioned, we know that parents are some of the most powerful partners that we have to making sure that our students are reaching their short-term and long-term goals. And so this year we've launched an initiative with our Future Readiness Parent Seminars. These take place on Wednesday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m. We've delivered 18 of them so far this year for a total of 54 hours of parent professional development. And on the slide, you can see the variety of topics that we offer. We've also included a hyperlink to the community education page so that you can go back and reference everything that's been done so far, including the PowerPoint presentations and information. But these various topics were topics that were developed based on parent feedback, areas parents really wanted to know and understand better. So we're really proud of the initiative that we've launched this year and are really looking forward to ramping it up next year. So there are also some really critical junctures in a student's education that we know support is absolutely essential, and that's when kids transition from our various campuses. So when kids transition from 5th to 6th grade or 8th to 9th grade, we know that families have a lot of really important decisions that they weigh in terms of course selection, opportunities that they want their kids to take advantage of that result in kids who are college and career ready. And so this slide provides an example of many of the supportive opportunities that we provide during the school day to help our kids make those transitions. And I want to mention that a lot of these opportunities are in partnership with lots of other departments across the district and campus leadership. So we're really thankful for that partnership. And then finally, I want to highlight a special program that's offered on each of our comprehensive high schools. It's offered wall-to-wall at Early College High School and is available at one of our middle schools, and that's our AVID elective. AVID electives are electives that students choose to take through the entire course of their high school or middle school career. For part of it, kids have to agree that they're going to take some challenging coursework. When they hit their junior and senior year, they're opting into college-bearing credit courses. The great thing about the AVID class is that it has built-in tutorials, and so we teach kids how to organize themselves, how to take effective notes, how to self-advocate. And with regard to a lot of the initiatives Michelle talked about with increasing those SAT scores, we know that not all of our kids are able to take courses to prepare for the SAT outside of the regular school day. And so our junior kids who are in the AVID elective have the opportunity to get a full year's worth of Princeton Review curriculum at no cost to them. And we've partnered with our partners in education to help defray the cost of those test prep materials, which can be pretty expensive. But this has really been an invaluable tool, and we've seen and continue to see really great data about where our kids head after they graduate when they've been in this program with support. And then we're happy to take any questions that you have.
Ms. Feller.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I have a few questions. Let's start on slide 4 when you talk about the assessments that we've done, which, by the way, with the high school junior, I appreciate the in-school test days of the SAT and the PSAT. It is an incredible resource for our students whose families may not make that a priority, and all they have to do is actually show up at school. So I really appreciate that now that we've actually benefited from that, that the district has. My question is the kids that we've identified at an earlier age in 8th grade or do exceptionally well in the 10th grade PSAT, what strategies do we have as a district to enrich those kids besides just a AP coursework in high school?
So one of the initiatives that we have, each of the comprehensive high schools offers a summer PSAT course between the 10th grade and 11th grade year for those students that are in striking distance of national merit. And so those students are invited to come and participate in that course to help prepare them to do well on their junior PSAT, which is how they qualify for national merit. And then the counselors follow them through the process of applying for that, filling all the forms out, et cetera, during the course of their junior year if they're eligible. So that's one of the ways that we're addressing it. I'd have to look into what some of the individual high schools are doing beyond that.
What is the definition of striking distance?
It varies
I'm
from
sure
year to
there's
year
kind of a
because it's a
range.
relative number. But yeah, they project a range, and so we kind of look at where are they in proximity to the range. Typically, you're looking at the top 50 to 100 students.
Okay. And of those that are identified for that program, how many do you actually have that take advantage of that opportunity? And where is that spread out across the district? Where did they come from?
We'd have to look at that data to get
Oh,
it
okay.
to you. Some of it is impacted by students
sorry,
who have to
I'm
work.
throwing this data
and-
question at you. What I didn't
No,
know
perfectly
that
fine.
was an option.
Yeah, some of them have to work. Some of them are involved in
Sure.
other activities, so they're not able, even if they want to, they're not able to take advantage of that. But we would have to look at what each of the campuses are doing and get that data for you.
My next question is on slide 6 and 7 when we're looking at the results on the SAT by ethnicity for reading and writing and then by math. While I am over the top excited that we are outperforming state and nation, if you look at the data, it's obvious that there's a difference by ethnicity, which relates to the slide 9 that Stony Point is doing in encouraging that higher level math class in 6th grade, which I remember when Natalie stood up here and I thought it was an incredible initiative. Are there any strategies for identifying and boosting the specific ethnicity groups, African American, Hispanic, and even the white population to hit the measures of our Asian population on these scores?
So I think if you look at slide 11, that's one of the most promising practices that we have. The Khan Academy is a free, individualized practice portal for our kids to go in and get specific practice examples that are related to areas that they need to strengthen.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see if you look at the beginning of that chart to the end, it does improve everyone's score and it does close the gap. And so we're working with our teachers to help infuse time into their day for students to engage with Khan Academy, whether it's a bell ringer warm-up or it is assigned as homework or it is used on sub days or it's just embedded in maybe they're doing rotations in the classroom. So we're encouraging them to not only just link those accounts, but also to access that and spend time. Because if they spend more than 22 hours, you see the vast difference that it can make, and that's just on average.
Can I follow up on that just real quick, Amber?
Yes.
So, I mean, that's great unless you don't have like internet access at home and it's homework. In 22 hours to try to get that in the classroom, that's quite a bit for some of our maybe kids that are, don't have that extra time. How are we following up to make sure? 22 hours is a lot, right? And I had the same questions about the African American and the Hispanic scores, especially on math. They don't meet benchmark, and so that's obviously a concern. So I would love to see them all get 22 hours, but how do we do that with kids that may not have internet at home to do it as homework?
And some of that work is the work that we have in front of us. Is now that we know the results and now that we've seen the impact, how do we go forward with this data and ensure that it's happening for all of our students? We do have students access to devices during the school day where they have access to internet as well, and so they are accessing it there. But yeah, how do we make sure? Some of the work we have ahead of us.
I'd like to add back to President Chadwell, back to Ms. Feller's question. I just want to compliment Ms. Nichols isn't here tonight, but you saw in her presentation the work's pretty dramatic that she's done. And a big part of what I've watched Ms. Nichols do over the past year, a little over a year and a half, is the communication piece. And I think regardless of the resources, and we've got to continue to do better to provide resources and platforms for kids to stay late at school or come early, whatever that may be. But I can tell you Ms. Nichols was very aggressive in communicating with the Stony Point learning community about these opportunities. And I think we've got great parents in this district. When they realize what opportunities exist, they seize those opportunities. So I think our chore is, we say a lot of our work is ahead of us, and we've got to do much better is communicating that to families of how you move the needle on math, for example, and how those numbers of kids getting in advanced courses in the 6th grade escalate. So I just wanted to compliment Ms. Nichols, even though she's not here. And I think communication is a huge piece that we've got to do better at with all of our learning communities to make sure parents know what opportunities exist.
Well, and I speaking from a personal perspective here on the Khan Academy, I'm obviously, I consider myself a pretty involved parent, and I didn't even know Khan Academy existed as a resource until probably after my son took the PSAT his sophomore year. And I'm like, wow, if I'd have known about this ahead of time. And then to actually get my child to sit down and do the work for all those hours. And he's a good student. And so, I would love to see ways to extra credit, things to make it a thing for our students to have that motivation to do it that outside of the school building. And I know we communicate really well on some levels, but just getting that information out and hitting them over and over and over, because it is an incredible resource, and we saw the payout from using Khan Academy, so it is a great one. Okay, so I have two more questions.
Can I get to Mr. Moses and come back? Is that all right?
Oh, yeah.
He's been waiting, and then we'll go back around. Sorry.
Thank you, President Chadwell. I promise I have a couple just quick ones. I think we all were probably looking at those same slides showing the results and the different demographics and the reading and the math portions. And I was just wondering if throughout the year and in preparation for those tests, are there any, and especially since we're doing some things to get students better prepared for those exams, are there any benchmarks or any measurements that we look at kind of from the time they take their first practice and until they get there, just so we can help them track as they build towards the SAT?
So if they are engaged in a Princeton Review course, whether it be in the AVID 3 or the College Readiness and Study Skills or an outside of school course, which I didn't mention the fact that those courses, we've trained our own teachers to deliver those courses. So those are not the $1,000 courses that they have to go take at UT. They just basically pay for the cost of materials and the teacher being there. Those have diagnostics embedded in them. So they're taking those periodically, and we're building those kinds of questions into our Director of Curriculums here. He can speak to that. We're building those into our assessments, our district assessments, so that they're practicing those kinds of questions whenever they're taking an assessment.
Okay, so I'm glad to know it's not the $1,000 thing. But is it at a level where it is perhaps cost prohibitive to some of our students? And then if it is there anything we can do to help that, either working with the community or otherwise?
So it's $125 for a student to take the course. Unless they are eligible for free and reduced lunch, then it's $25. Okay. Because we want them to have some skin in the game. We did a lot of research, and that was kind of the point where if I'm going to pay that money, I'm going to actually show up and do the work.
Okay. And then I know, Dr. Presley, you kind of touched on this, and it's not really a question, it's more of a thank you, because that was the thing that jumped out at me is how the students are looking at getting 50% of the feedback from their parents about the influence of going to higher education. And that's a huge number. So I'm glad to see that we are doing more to reach out to parents, provide them some more information, the seminars that we're hosting and doing, just to make them more aware. Because I realize that some folks are fortunate when they grew up in a household where both parents went to college or one has a master's degree, so they're going to get hit over the head with it every day. But I know that's not the makeup of every single student in Round Rock. So just to have these opportunities to get that in front of them, I'm glad we're doing that and I appreciate it.
And I will say that the seminars around this topic, typically we have about 150 parents that show up each time. So it's popular, and they're really excited, and they're learning a lot of new information. And we have plans next year to push those out into some unique spaces. So instead of always hosting them here or at a high school campus, we're looking at pushing them out into some other spaces in the community to hopefully pull in people that might not feel comfortable navigating our big high schools. So we're excited about it.
And I wanted to add as well, this team has also worked closely with the parent support specialist of each learning community to take the information to the parents within the learning community that they're working with.
All right, Ms. Gonzalez and Ms. Vesson, we'll come back to that, all right? Okay.
And I was going to speak on that topic as well. I was so glad to see that you're reaching out to parents and you're giving them the information, because as we know, not everybody had parents that went to college. I was actually a first-generation college grad, and navigating all of that was difficult. And I was raised by my grandmother, so she wasn't aware of all the resources. But we figured it out. But it's always coming from the school and actually not being afraid to ask the questions, and the questions are actually given to you in form of answers. But real quick, let's go to slide 13. And that's going to talk about the correlation between going directly to from high school to college. So it dropped a little. So are we monitoring the kids that are going to private institutions, and also did we have an increase in military enrollment?
Well, these data are from the National Student
Yes, I know.
Clearinghouse, so they do capture just about every college and university. They're not capturing trade schools, cosmetology schools, things like that, but it's pretty comprehensive.
Well, I think it's important to remember not every student is college bound. And just because they don't go directly from high school to college doesn't mean they might take that year off and decide later, I need some education.
Yes, and we do see we do see additional students enroll in the spring and then the second year after high school. But I think what I'm most excited about are some of the things we're working on to get you more information about students who do transfer directly to the workforce. One of the things we're working on with the chamber on now, they're seeking some grant funds to pursue more of a direct to work type of partnership. We have other partners who are exploring the link between our CTE programs and the transition to the workforce within the state of Texas databases that are available through the Education Research Center. So even though there's a little bit of an absence of information there now, we're hoping that over the next year or two we'll be able to bring to the board a lot richer picture of where our students go after graduation.
That'd be great. And real quick, I am a huge fan of AVID. I've actually worked with students that had gone through different AVID programs and remarkable young people that actually told me I wouldn't have gone to college had it not been for AVID. So quick question on that. We only offer it at one middle school. How did we identify that middle school, and why are we not doing it in more middle schools?
I'm fairly new to the program, so I'm not sure, but we're happy to get that information for you about how that particular middle school was identified. We may have people up here who were involved with it at that point in time. But
Okay, I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you for the presentation.
All right, Ms. Vessa, then Ms. Weir.
So I had sent you some questions earlier in the week about just some different things that I was interested in, and so you were great, and they provided the answers to my questions. And but I want to make sure that everyone who's watching hears the answers too, because there's some really great data that you presented to us in response. So my first question was, how many district students are required to take remedial courses in college? Because one thing that comes up a lot is that we're saying like on that we're 65% are college ready in both. So are we seeing that they get to college and then they have to spend several semesters just even getting up to snuff to be able to take coursework at college level? So go ahead.
Oh, well, for this one, probably because we don't get direct data back from colleges and universities, I did rely on a TEA, the TAPA report. They get information from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, and that indicated that of our students who matriculate to a college or university, about 75% of them did not need to take a developmental course their entire freshman year. So we were able to find that.
And how does that compare to the region and the state?
Well, I didn't actually put a copy in front of myself, but
I can read it.
If you wouldn't mind helping
me. For our region, in 2015, or 14 and 15, it was 67%, and ours was 73%, and the state was 55.6%. And in 2015-16, ours was 76.2%, the region was 69.3%, and the state was 55.7%. So we're about over, right, I mean, the latest year that we have, we're over 20 percentage points higher in terms of our number of students that don't have to take a remedial course.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Patty. I remembered one number, the most important number.
All right, is that for now, Ms. Weir?
Sorry. So I was just curious, on all the data that you brought, the benchmark scoring, it was for 17 and then 2018, but then this was class of, and I don't have the right pages because I printed it out before you add the extra page. So I think it's page 8 where you do the combining all college readiness assessments, but you do that for the class of 2019 for this year. And so I was just curious how the numbers from 17 and 18 correlated overall.
They're actually very similar. We're not seeing a big departure from the last couple of graduating classes. And if I do remember from the annual report that the final number of college ready in both for the last graduating class was 63%. So we're still kind of in that area.
And so, like, the SAT scores come out tomorrow. Are we hoping this number for the class of 2019 will go up at all?
Well, those are students who were juniors, correct? Their juniors are getting their scores back, and
this is the seniors.
This is our current
Okay.
senior class.
Right. So my other question actually was, I love the Stony Point information, and I guess I was just kind of curious if we could get a breakdown by learning community right now. I mean, just so as we go through in the future, to see how that's affecting, if we could break those numbers out to see progress in that area.
Okay.
And then I just wanted to follow up on Trustee Gonzalez and say, I am a big fan of AVID. And one thing you said, you didn't know how CD Folks was picked, but the other part of her question, which was my question, was, are there any plans to bring it to some of the other middle schools?
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, please.
I can probably address that. Avid is relatively new to the district. I think it's been here 6 years now, maybe 7. And it was offered to all 5 high schools when its inception into the district, when the program, we began to offer it. And so all the high schools started an Avid program. And then as we got into it, we found from training, from Avid training, that you really need to have it at the middle school level as well to make the high school successful. So the opportunity was offered to middle school. CD Folks and Grisham chose to take the program. Grisham has since phased it out because they didn't have enough kids wanting to take that elective course. And so they felt like it was less effective for at Grisham. And so about, I think last year or maybe the year before was the last year it was offered at Grisham, because they phased out the kids who started it until they went through 8th grade, and they chose not to continue the program there. So CD Folks right now is the only one. We're open to other middle school. If principals say we'd like to have that on our campus, we think it would be beneficial to scaling it to other schools as well. And so that's kind of where we are. It's a relatively new program to the district. It has been effective for a lot of kids. I think our first Avid graduating class was the year before last. And so each year, as Avid graduates go across, they get cords and things that indicate they're Avid students. So,
So if a middle school were to choose to do it, is that an extra teacher that comes in that they get an allotment for, or do they have to choose, like, we're going to lose a choir because we've now have Avid?
well, we wouldn't necessarily be losing a program like choir, but they work it within the allotments that are granted for their campus. But if a number of kids choose to take Avid, then it displaces them from other things they would be taking. It's just like an elective at a high school. So if it works for the campus, but we don't give a special allotment to the middle schools to incorporate the program. But let me say this, in the beginning, if a school wanted to start that, there's a possibility we'd have that discussion and see, we'll grant an extra until the program builds with multiple grades that are interested in taking it. But at Grisham, the request from the campus was we want to phase it out because we just don't have that many takers on it, and our kids are, and it's a commitment in high school as well because it's an elective class you take, so it's difficult sometimes for a kid who's in fine arts or athletics to commit an extra, because it's every year. You take that elective each year as you go through high school.
I will say our numbers are growing at each of the high schools. The recruiting class from this year was quite successful, and so we're very excited to see the health of it continue at the high schools.
And I think it goes back to the education piece that you were talking about. My sister-in-law is a counselor in Fort Bend, and they have it in their middle schools, and my nephew's actually going to do it, and because they've done a really good job of getting the word out to the 5th grade parents and what they're going to do and what it's going to accomplish. So, I mean, it's a great program.
Back to Ms. Feller here. Okay.
So one of my questions was already answered. I did want to just make sure that you knew that I thought you guys are doing a great job with all of this, and it's evidenced by the Austin Chamber recognizing us for our high rates. And so, I mean, it's really exciting, the opportunities that our students have in this district. my last question is probably more for Mandy or Danny, is with the slide that's up here, this is a relatively free intervention that we can provide as a district. Are there any plans to expand this outside of the Stony Point learning community? And I know who asked for that information about other, and I mean, maybe we're already at 56% in enrollment at a, Hopewell has 56% now that are enrolled in advanced math in 6th grade. We might already be at 56% at, say, Grisham, but could we boost that to 75% by those interventions that's happening in the Stony Point learning community?
I think definitely, and I think I mentioned that earlier. I think we need to do better in all of our learning communities. But the fact that Ms. Nichols was very aggressive last year, a lot of evenings and time that she spent connecting with parents and encouraging the principals to do the same, that aggressive approach is what we need in all of our learning communities. No matter how high it is, it can go higher.
Right.
And so we'll look at the numbers, as Ms. Weir has asked, to see what this looks like in all of our learning communities so we can kind of have a comparative and hopefully a growing initiative that this gets better in all of our learning communities.
And one piece that additional information that might be important to know, what Ms. Nichols and Stony Point Learning Community did was partner with E3 Alliance. That was a big part of this through NAEP as well. So there were opportunities for this learning community to participate in that existed. And so typically in our district, it is a kind of a snowball effect to initiatives such as this. The other learning communities and principals, when they see success somewhere, it is replicated. But I also want to point out the district efforts and the parent seminars. That's a great uptick in our efforts at the district level to support improved parent communication. And again, it goes back to the slide in which we know that our students are primarily guided and informed by first their parents. And so while we would love for that number to be teachers or counselors, the reality is that's where they get their information from. And so we realize that that's very, very important for us to connect closely with the parents, and we're continuing to try to stretch that initiative to reach more and more.
And my last thought is on the Khan Academy again. After we modified our school day and allowed for the before-school tutoring, is that an option to have that Khan Academy available in that before school? Does that happen, or can a student come in and request that, or do the students know that if they don't have access to internet at home, they could come in that tutorial time that's now officially part of the calendar?
Yeah, they definitely should be able to, whether it be in a teacher's room with a computer out of a cart or going to the library. They all have their own account with College Board, their own account with Khan Academy. Those have been linked, and they can just log in wherever they are.
Do you think that that's been well communicated with our high schoolers to take advantage of that opportunity?
I can't say if it has or hasn't at this point, but I definitely think it could be part of our ongoing plan.
Okay. Great job.
Moses.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say, and Dr. Forrest, commend you and your team, because I think a lot of districts in the state of Texas, when they saw these numbers, they would say, hey, we're beating the state, we're beating the nation, this is good, and they would just kind of keep going on as is going on. But here, seeing the proactiveness of saying, hey, yeah, we're beating the state, yes, beating the nation, but we know we can do better. We know there's more work to do for our kids. And so I think that mindset is just, we see it across the number of presentations we get, but I just want to commend the work that the staff's doing and our teachers and our principals to really move this along. So thank you for what you're doing and the work you put in.
Make a quick comment here. Thank you for the presentation. Great detail. I think it's slide 17 or so. We have all of the different resources that are available. Maybe it's 16, all of that. I know that there's a lot that starts, and it's gotten there's more activity every year. So applaud everybody for that. It is interesting. I was surprised at the number on page 15 before that parents are 50%, 49%, and it's, I think there's so many opportunities where students are exposed to, not only college but career, and I'm glad to see that as always as an option, is that we have other technical and then of course military as well. So, and then my final question comment was on page 17. You have male. What's female ratio? Is that missing? I don't see it. That's it.
Well, on the third row, We are showing that boys, young men who were contacted during summer melt did have higher direct-to-college enrollment rates than those who were not.
Okay.
And there is that differential between boys and girls now. So.
Okay, I'm just curious about it. All right.
Yeah.
Any other comments, board members? Anything else? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the input. We'll make one quick comment. E3 Alliance, you mentioned that earlier, and I know there's a training coming up. I think everybody saw that email. I've been to that in the past. It's more of an overview. I think this is different this year. I don't know if you have any comments on that, what's going on, or the chamber with the E3 Alliance that's coming up in April, end of April or whatever. But if you can make that, that'd be great. So, all right. Anything else? We'll go on to agenda item I, discussion items, consideration of board training. This is a follow-on to the discussion we had at the end of, I think, our last workshop. And two things that are kind of on our agenda. Three things, actually, is the E3 Alliance, which really is a training, but then we always have, there's TASB leadership programs. It's going to be the next one's going to be in the summer in Fort Worth, and then also in San Antonio. And I don't remember which, they alternate 1 year, the first one or whatever. By law, all of us are supposed to do 10 hours the first year of training and then 5 hours subsequently after that. But I think everybody's made their number for the year, if I'm guessing. So, but the other thing that we've talked about is going to doing a team of 8 training, which we really is kind of coordinated with what we want to do anyway, and then also the Holsworth training, which I know we filled out the paperwork. Is that right? And submitted it. Ms. Feller, I think you did that, and put a placeholder for us, right? Oh. Holsworth.
Yes, we did get our Lone Star governance application submitted.
That's right. Thank you.
Met with some staff on the Friday before spring break, so I appreciate everybody who kind of added to what they were doing, working on other agendas and deadlines, and also trying to get out and enjoy their vacation. So thank you to staff that helped with that. But we did get our application submitted. I did get an email back acknowledging receipt, and so it's my understanding they'll notify us. Don't quote me on this. I'm working off of not a lot of sleep this week, but I think it's early to mid-April, the status of that.
What is it? So it's a cohort group of how many other districts? 5 or so? Or?
I believe it's 10 districts, but again, I wasn't prepared on this one. But if we are selected as a cohort, the board in total will attend training July 14th through 16th, something like that. It's a 2-day training. And if you're not in the cohort, you go to the training and then that's it. But if you're selected into the cohort, you are assigned a representative to come back and actually work with us as a board to implement the strategies and the things that you learned and how to rework your agendas and things like that for an entire year. And it's at no charge to the district. And then there is an option after that first year if you felt that advisor was beneficial to extend it to a second year. And so if we are selected as the cohort, then at that point we can vote as a board if this is we want to enter this program and are all going to commit to the 2-day training and things like that.
And where is it held? Where will it be
Austin.
held? But where in Austin?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, like Region 13, TASB, or just somewhere? Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Well, that's something we can find out. So related to that, of course, is all of the other training that we have coming up, the TASB training options, and then it seemed like there was one other thing that the board members. Oh, and then you're going to NSBA in Philadelphia. Maybe that's what it is.
So I leave in the morning for the National School Board Association conference. But I also did want to know if anybody would like to have somebody with a lot greater knowledge on Lone Star governance come and speak with us about what's involved with it, how it will change, maybe shorten our meetings, focus. The big thing behind Lone Star governance is it really changes the focus to academic achievement and talking about how we're going to improve our numbers.
Okay.
Just based on my past conversations with A.J. Crayville, with the TEA, and some other stuff, I'm happy to help out with that.
To get someone to come talk to us?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe if we do that, it might be worthwhile to also have what's his name from TASB, who's done the XG governance, because there's some similarities between those programs. It might be worthwhile to give us a 15-minute overview of, or one of the, because there's similarities between the excellence governance is an option. So I don't know if you all have had any experience with that, and if, think of the man's name who does it predominantly, but a similar focus, which is to zero in on our highest priorities, which is student outcome, and everything else we do around here with our budgets and policies and whatever else our responsibilities are all ultimately responsible for that. Ultimately, so. Anyways, go ahead.
I don't want to change topics if we were switching gears there, but Team of 8. I know some dates were sent out for everybody. I didn't know how many responded or where we're at. I think that's we are just with 3 new trustees. We are well past probably when we should have done Team of 8 to do some work. So if we can get that, get one, the date finalized, and 2, figure out who's going to come up facilitate that conversation.
Yep. I know you've had some. You sent some recommendations.
We too, so I know there's a lot of names out there.
We have not set a date yet, but you have some.
Yeah, there's some dates that Friday, April 26th, Saturday, April 27th, Friday, May 3rd, Friday, May 10th, Saturday, May 11th. I can slow down on those dates, but again, what I think is it is imperative that this discussion of Team of 8 and training, I think it needs to provide the clarity that we do want to seek, and I appreciate the board. I do know that also I was quiet on Lone Star governance. I had a conversation with Commissioner Morath, and one thing he said, is there anything that we can help you guys with? And I told him that there was some interest in Lone Star governance. He said, just let us know. So I'm glad to hear this collective board speak to the fact that Lone Star governance is something that can be an option, or at least for further discussion. So I'm sure that the commissioner, and because in the past with Lone Star, it is about focusing boards and administrations on student outcomes, but it also is about the fact that it's on the right stuff, so that we can spend less time on some of the mundane tasks that sometimes may take us a while, and focus on the things that really do move the needle, such as the last presentation. So again, I think that's a very good discussion. So just, I'm sorry that I missed the workshop, because indeed I could have chimed in that, the commissioner is definitely interested in helping, because Lone Star governance was reserved when it was originated for districts that were academically in trouble but what has happened to that is that it's become a very, very sought after training. And I spoke to Danny King at our last Holsworth session, and Danny King was, and if you know Danny King at Far San Juan Alamo, he's an amazing superintendent, and they've got an amazing board. And he spoke about the work they were doing in Donna, Texas. And he says their board is focused on student achievement and student outcomes. So when I heard that, I said, my goodness, there's something. So I'm glad to hear this board is looking at these options, and I'll reserve my comments till later as far as the Team of 8. So I do think, though, it's imperative that we get to some Team of 8 training.
So those dates, Patty, if you could send those out again, I can be available. I think everything you listed there. I don't have any, and I'm open Fridays, weekend. We were talking about a half day or 2 half day or noon. I mean, starting at noon and going.
Can we talk about dates up here?
Yeah, we're posting to talk about board training. So, yeah, okay. If you have a preference, let us know right now. Otherwise,
Patty, can you say those dates one more time?
Why don't you bring it over here, Patty? Or you have them right there, Dr. Is it in my folder?
Yeah, we have those, but are these additionals, the ones I have? None of the others have worked. So these, let me slow it down then.
Okay.
Friday, April the 26th. Saturday.
Can we just take a poll to see who's available on that before you go on to the next one, and then just see if we find any consensus, and then we can stop? So who's available on Friday, April 26th? Okay, that's
No
not
Mason?
everybody?
No.
Okay. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Saturday was April the 27th, the next day.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends what time. If we did it early in the morning, that'd be
5:30. It's usually Saturday.
I would be there at 5:30.
PM? Yes.
AM.
We do Reveille, and then we do apps, calisthenics. And so anyway,
So there's potential on the 27th.
Saturday the 27th. Okay.
Friday, May 3rd.
Good for me?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah? Yeah?
Hey,
Wait,
everybody's
wait,
good
wait.
on
Let
that
me
one.
slow down. That looked like everybody there.
Ding,
so
ding, 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 ding.
Friday, May 3rd, okay.
I won't be available. No, I'm just teasing. I'll make myself available. This is very critical, this training, so thank you.
And were we going to do Dr. Green that same day as Team of 8, or was that a separate thing we were talking about?
From UT, I thought that was a separate
Yeah.
thing, but I would like for us to do the team of 8 first, and then, we can work that.
Yeah, because the next question, if everybody's available on May 3rd, is but Ms. Weir is exactly right. Who will be the facilitator? And we can also, if we can figure that out, as well as location, or at least have some options for the facilitator, and y'all can do that now and let us know who y'all would like to have. And I know that some of you expressed some, and maybe we can check with them. And also the location. Since it's a Saturday, I'd think the technology center probably works well.
We said Friday.
Oh, I'm sorry. Friday, May 3rd. Well, technology center may be available. That's always a good place to be.
Okay. So let's tentatively set for Friday, May 3rd, is that right? And would this be an all-day? Or roughly? Okay. All right, we'll go with that. And then Ms. Aguilar just handed this to me and said 27th, for whatever reason, if April 27th doesn't work, it's the job fair. And that's almost an all-day thing, right? That's at Cedar Ridge, is that right? Or is it, Stony Point?
It's Stony Point.
Yeah, that's where they have people come from all over. Very interesting process. So, all right. So, any other discussions on that for right now? Okay. Now we've got a few more things to head. Do we want to take a quick break?
Well,
go ahead.
Can I add, because you did mention the Summer Leadership Conference, and the only reason why housing opens next week, and usually housing is very important, that's San Antonio, June 13th, 15th. That's the first one. So depending on, so I think it'd be helpful today to decide on which one of the two conferences.
Just for everybody's knowledge here, we normally try to go to the same conference as a team, but it's not required. It's a matter of preference. So if you have a preference for San Antonio or Fort Worth, say it now, Ms. Feller.
I'm not available for Dallas or the Fort Worth location.
Okay.
But I thought we had talked about it, and most everybody
Yeah.
else wanted to go to Fort Worth.
I'm not available for San Antonio, but I don't know that I'll be able to go to either, so
Yeah.
don't
Again,
plan
it's
around
not
me.
it's not a requirement.
I'm the same way.
Yeah. I would say if we have a preference, go ahead and let it be known that it's starting registration tomorrow.
April 3rd is.
April next week.
But that would be before April the 3rd. Let Patty know so that we can get on cue for that.
The one thing to note, if majority does go to the Fort Worth, that's the night of a board meeting.
Yeah. See,
So
that
we
says-
would have to reschedule
Yeah.
the June board meeting.
Thank you. Good point.
And Dr. Oddix reminded me that June 20th, that's when we adopt the budget. So he got a little nervous. So when he gets nervous, I get nervous.
Let's kind of scratch. Let's keep it to.
Thank you,
Keep
Dr.
it. Thank
Oddix.
you. All right. So that pretty much settles that one. I would recommend we try not to interfere with We've already moved 2 this year. This one this month and February. So I'd like to stay on the 3rd. Good point there, Dr. Flores. Bring that up. All right. Any other comments on that for right now? We take a quick break. Do you want to, or do you want to? Is that all right? Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and try to finish up. Mr. Moses, if you get us a score, please. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started again. Wow. All right. All right, let's go to J, agenda item. We're back in session. It's 9:21. And with that, we'll go to agenda item J1, adoption of resolution recognizing National Library Week and School Library Month. Dr. Flores.
No, I just, it's consent, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What is it? Oh, consent?
But,
Okay, I was going to say, you have any comments?
I just see Amy Usselman and the outstanding work that they do, and I just wanted to acknowledge. So, Mandy, do you want to say a couple things before? Because Amy Usselman, she makes Jeff very proud.
Everybody loves our librarians, and that's due in large part to the leadership of Amy Uselman. I think all of our trustees know her, but some of the newer ones may be a little less familiar. But She is one of the most bubbly individuals in this district. She always has a smile. She's always wanting to partner with people to help us with our literacy initiatives. She sees her role not just as a librarian, but a technology specialist, a reading expert, and just is a stellar partner for us. So very, very honored to have you adopt a resolution to honor our librarians this month.
Okay. Mr. Moses.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the board adopt action items J1 and J2 by consent.
Second.
Got a motion and a second for action items J1 and 2 by consent. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 7-0. All right, thank you. Go to agenda item K, action items, approval of instructional materials, adoption committee recommendations for Proclamation 2019. Dr. Flores.
Yes, Mandy asks if there's questions, will guide us through this one.
Yes, and so this was a lengthy adoption process, and it's a large adoption because it does represent literacy for K through 8, as well as Spanish language arts for K through 5. We do have our planning committee, the members of our planning committee that led this process here with us, and I'd like, with your permission, to acknowledge them. So if you all would stand, they're kind of hiding back in the back, I believe. So this team spent a lot of hours with a group of very dedicated teachers pouring through the resources because this is a significant expenditure for the district. We do receive budget money for instructional materials, but we try to spend that wisely and still provide the students and the teachers with everything that they need. Sometimes this process can be a little messy at first because there's so many materials coming in, so many people with so many different opinions, and we have to make sure that all of it marries with our technology systems and so forth. But if you meet anybody, any of the teachers who served on that committee, please commend them as well because it went very, very smoothly, and we're very proud to bring this recommendation to you tonight.
Great. Any other comments on that? Otherwise, I'll take a motion for.
I move that the Board of Trustees approve the Instructional Materials Adoption Committee recommendations for Proclamation 2019 as presented by the administration.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the Materials Adoption Committee recommendation. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 7-0. All right, go to agenda item K2, consideration possible action on resolution which would approve and authorize the following real estate conveyances and agreements. Conveyance of 15.123 acres of real property located in the Arthur Garner Survey Abstract Number 2704, the William J. Baker Survey Abstract Number 2695 in Travis County, Texas, and the Arthur. I'm going to read all of this. I'm not going to read it a second time. I read it once just so it goes in the record. Garner Survey Abstract Number 253 in Williamson County, Texas, and being a portion of a 30-acre tract of land conveyed to Round Rock Independent School District in a warranty deed of record in volume 12885, page 1335 of the Real Property Records of Travis County, Texas, out of what is commonly known as the McNeil High School site to Travis County, Texas by special warranty deed in perpetuity for mitigation purposes. Number 2, granting the an access easement agreement to Travis County for a portion of the remainder of the McNeil High School property. Number 3, approval of a license agreement for the district's right to enter the portion of property conveyed to the Travis County under certain terms. And number 4, partial termination of Williamson County Habitat Conservation participation agreement for portion of the property conveyed to Travis County. And number 5, agreement to participate in the Balcones Canyon Lands Conservation Plan. So with that, we have this whole, so I guess we just need this. Any other comments, questions? We have some legal. Mr. Worcester, do you have any comments on that real quick?
Thank you, President Chadwell. We have with us tonight Ms. Ann Greenberg, who is with Walsh Gallegos Legal, and we have been working for approximately 24 months plus to be able to develop this conveyance on behalf of McNeil High School Conservation of 2 caves and endangered species. And so the documents are extensive, and the work within agencies have been extensive, and so we encourage you to convey and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Worcester. Board members, any comments? Ms. Gonzalez?
No, I was going to make a motion. If there's any comments, go ahead before me.
Any comments? All right. Go for it.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the resolution and all transactions contemplating, I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on, contemplating therein.
Second.
Have a motion and a second that the board approve the resolution and all transactions contemplated therein. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 7-0. Great, that is a big milestone. So,
Congratulations, Amy.
yeah. All right, we'll go to agenda item K3, approval of designated architect for the 2018 Bond Support Services Building Master Plan and Design. Mr. Twister.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chadwell. Again, this is a fairly large project, and so as we go through the processes of procuring architectural services and other builder services, this is just to bring to your notice that this is a project that has been selected, or a design firm has been selected, and so for your notice and for your approval.
Mr. Moses.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve PBK Architects, Inc. as the architect for the Support Services Building Master Plan and Design.
Ms. Weir.
Actually, I just had a quick question. This was the sole finalist, but I was just curious how many people had actually put into for this job initially.
For this project, approximately 13 submittals were received and evaluated.
Thanks. Okay. I'll second the motion now.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for PBK Architects for the Support Services Building Master Plan and Design. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 7-0. Go to agenda item K4, award of competitive seal proposal for bond project for roof replacement, 22 district-owned portable classroom buildings. Mr. Worcester.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. There is a mention here that goes along with this action item in that this is a portion of a project that is 3 years. The $700,000 that you see mentioned is for first year budget only, and of that, we are asking to spend $325,500 for roofing of the first year. And so it is sectioned down so that it is a part of, and it will have a continuation of portable improvements for painting and carpet and things of that nature in the first year. And so with that, we begin re-roofing 22 existing district-owned portables.
Okay, Mr. Worcester, thank you. Take a motion if anybody so inclined.
So
Ms.
I
go ahead.
I have a
Sure.
comment. I know this is a necessary evil, but I hate the fact that we're spending money on portables. I know that it's a necessary evil and that we're growing so fast and things like that, but they're a good and a bad. But so I just wanted to make sure that was.
Okay.
Okay. But if I'm moving for something I don't like, no. I move that the board approve the roofing portion of the bond project number 800R047 portable refurbish for the roof replacement of 22 district-owned portable classroom buildings as presented in the amount of $325,500.
Second.
Got a motion and a second for roof replacement for $325,500. Any further discussion? I will say the same thing. I know it's kind of we're investing, but we have to take care of them. We're still using them, and we may sell them, lease them, something, so we have to take care of them. So.
And I'd rather have portables than no buildings, no classrooms. So.
Or leaky and moldy and things like that.
Yep.
So. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 7-0. Go to agenda item K5, consideration possible action on board committees, board policies, and board operating procedures. This is a follow-on to our discussion we had a couple of weeks ago.
May I start this off?
Sure.
I'm sorry I missed the last meeting. There's a lot of progress that was made with regards to the committees, and I do know that tonight I look forward to the final work and conclusion so that we can schedule our meetings that are going to be forthcoming, because I do know that the exciting work, this is where the exciting work, I believe, is really going to start for the district with regards to whatever the committees are. I believe facilities is one that was discussed last week or 2 weeks ago, and I believe another was policy, innovation, and budget. So I look forward to some clarity on that, and then so that we can move forward with our administrative liaisons on that. And again, I want to commend this board for taking the time to sit down with me and talking about, as entry plan with new board members, one of the things that I realized that after the collective thought was that we probably need to get back to some of the structure of that. So thank you so much to make this possible with regards to how we can move this forward with such great work and vision of this board. So with that, I'll let you guys decide what we need to do with regards to committees. Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking here. It looks like just checking this agenda. Ms. Weir.
Well, I guess we did vote on who was going to be on the two committees already, so they're already set. I think the only thing we were talking about is the wording of facilities moving finance over to policy.
It was my understanding that it was still going to be facilities and finance as it relates to the facilities. So there would still be that finance component of that committee, but the budget discussions would actually be, any budget discussions needed to be happening in a different committee. Is that
That's part of our policy committee. Yeah.
I don't know if we came to I don't really know if we concluded that. I think there's a lot of things that we really don't know until after the legislative session is done and what the projections are actually going to be. So is there a way we could add a committee later on, or so we could just get started right now?
Yep.
So I don't see the wording here online, but it's in the printout. I just don't see it. But I know we talked about the word budget. We were going to move the word budget, and I think that was, and I was talking to Mr. Ponick earlier, and it was more of a semantics. I don't think we were trying to say budget. It was more expenses and ongoing expenses, whereas a policy or facilities, if something, how does that impact our finances?
Right. I think I watched the last board meeting, and what I took away from the broad discussion that the board had about the committees was that it seemed to distill into more concretely taking the last bullet of the existing facilities committee charter that it says review and advise on long-term budgetary and financial issues, and transferring that over to the policy committee, and then renaming the policy committee to have, I guess, the word budget inserted somewhere. And I think that was the distillation, but it required board action. So, and I don't know if the new name of the policy committee would be Policy and Innovation and Budget Committee, if that would be sufficient, and if so, you'd need a motion to make that name change along with the transfer of the last bullet. I'm reading from your operating procedures, page 12. I don't know if you have those handy. The last bullet under the purpose section of the Facilities and Finance Committee charter on page 12 would then also be moved over to become part of the committee charter for the Policy and Innovation and Budget Committee. So if that's an accurate representation of what occurred at your last meeting, then we just need somebody to say so moved and have a vote on that.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so we got a motion and a second to move the last bullet on it says review and advise on long-term budgetary and financial issues.
Yes, sir.
Move that over to
the policy committee.
The policy committee.
That is now renamed.
All right, so you have a motion and a second on that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 7-0.
Can I ask one more question before we move to the next item? Because I guess I wanted to get a little more information on the protocol, because for scheduling and for setting of agendas and that sort of thing, because we did have some miscommunication the week before spring break. And then Mr. Worcester and I had already started talking and set an agenda and set a meeting. And I guess I want to be clear what the procedures are for that, because we don't really have that in the policy very strictly. I had talked to Mason about how he was going to do his committee, and we were just kind of going
Yeah.
forward. So.
I can kind of talk to that because I was in the room when we were kind of talking about that, and I felt that the room when we were talking about the agenda review, that having a facilities meeting the same week that we were having a board meeting, and also coming right back from spring break, was a little bit much for staff.
It was their idea.
Well,
Just so you know.
Let me interject here.
Mr. Worcester was pretty excited. And
Mr.
so
Wooster's
we were-
also new to the process, so we.
He is. Well, we're both new to the
we
process,
I
so we
talked
were
to
like,
him.
yeah, let's go.
I've talked to him at length about because really, in fairness, until now. So was there a vote? By the way, has this been voted on? There was, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
So
we're
good.
good.
So these are the committees because what were the committees were still. Because there was no action taken on the committees even though they were discussed and they were discussed very thoroughly, there was no action. So technically, having this meeting tonight to approve these committees officially and their charters officially is what was needed first and foremost before even scheduling. So I talked to Mr. Wooster about that. But also, back to, I think, your question, what we try to have is when the monthly board meeting is the monthly board meeting, that is the paramount meeting of the month. Thus, we try not to have any committee or even special meetings on that. Sometimes you'll have that, but it always stays for the monthly board meeting that week. So what then happened, I think, is that there was some confusion as to how we go about agendas. And now that these are formed, the administrative liaison, for example, on facilities, there's no doubt Mr. Wooster is the administrative, and you're the chair for that, correct? Mm-hmm. So the two of you would schedule time, and y'all have already done that, so that's good. Y'all have made the progress that needs to have been done. So y'all are ahead of the curve. As a result, now that becomes part of how we set agendas forward in the future with the two of you, and we look at, and they go through Patty because Patty schedules board meetings so that there's no confusion. And then eventually, I think tentatively that it's next Friday. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So with that, if that's the case, then I would then say to then determine what would be the best kind of a routine time or day. Time, y'all can be flexible.
Oh, we're ahead of you on that one.
Yeah,
We've already
yeah.
picked Fridays, and we're going
Okay.
to try to do it during the day,
Yeah.
knowing that we'll have a hard stop at about 2:30 because
Yeah.
Amber and I both have elementary pickup.
Perfect,
But that's
perfect.
what we're going to go for.
So that's basically the protocol, and then also keeping the president. He may attend those meetings, obviously as a president, and also I might be attending those as well. Now, I do attend committee meetings where we have citizens committees. Citizen committees I actually try to stay away from, so they can be in fact citizens. On these committees, I'll be attending, so I won't be able to attend the first one. But because my schedule won't allow. That's why some of the confusion was, tell me about this date on next Friday, because my calendar has been on the Friday. But we took care of that.
Well, just so you know, we're going to live stream it on Facebook. Jenny's already worked on that, and then we'll post it, because we probably won't be in here since we're in the day. So we're going to live stream it on Facebook, and then we'll post the video on the website afterwards.
And Dr. Flores, just for clarification, is it don't have a committee meeting just during the week of our big board meeting like this? Because we have so many board meetings that are workshops, or that we've had so many since the beginning of the year. So do we only not want to have a committee meeting on the fourth or the third Thursday, or
Third week.
That's
third week
definitely
of
the
the month.
decision of the board, and when y'all's calendars can allow, then we're flexible. That's why you're administrative liaison, and if it's during the day, obviously, it doesn't impact. We just need to schedule that piece. Now, afterwards, that's fine. So that's up to you guys. I would propose that, again, the Friday, if it's a Friday, that it might be once a month, and if y'all need another one, y'all come back and schedule that, and then maybe the first one of facilities, because facilities, the things that happen in a facilities committee, technically, if it's going to spawn an action item, it gives administration 2 weeks to act on that, to move forward, and gives time to get all the necessary documents and things ready for a board agenda 2 weeks later. The same can be said if you have the next week. And if it's Friday, I don't know what date that Mason you're looking at, but what date that is, I would say that could be the second week. And then your third week is the monthly, and then any other time. The fourth week is reserved The fourth week is reserved for whatever is necessary. Does that make sense? So if y'all need 2 in 1 month, I would reserve the second one to the fourth week, so and keep it that way. So, but it's up again. It's up to you guys. I don't.
Mason and I can arm
Yeah.
wrestle for it.
Yeah.
Well, no, and I think it should be all right because we'll figure that out. But I know just talking to Nikki and Corey, sounds like, again, I want to talk with staff, make sure it works for all of our calendars as well, because I know we have a lot going on. But it sounds like Monday evenings seem to be what works best for people's schedule at this time. So some of us are adjusting to make sure we can make that work.
Yeah, and again, I think with regards to, it's simple with the Chief Operating Officer, Wooster, and Facilities. When you go, I think the name of this is Facilities or Policy, Innovation, and Budget. Obviously, Dr. Presley would be the Innovation Liaison because he is Senior Chief for Schools and Innovation, so that would be who you'd have. And then you'd have also Mr. Dr. Oddix with regards to the budget. And then you have, we have finance, budget, and policy would be Sandra. So those are the three. So those are the ones. You don't need to involve the whole staff. That's what makes this flexible. They'll determine, as these agendas are formed, what staff is necessary to assist this board. So it'll work very well. I know that that's a lot of information for now, but it really will gel. Tonight's action from this board is really what we were needing, and it's very crystallized. We can then start working the dynamics of that with you guys. So thank you for that.
So I'll add to that too. So we've gone through the phase where we've had workshops, or we had meetings in here. They would get lengthy. Then we went to workshops and went to policy committees. Then they kind of got away from that, and we started doing workshops. And so there's part of it is this is a growing district. We got 55 campuses. There's a lot going on. We have a bond. And the purpose of the committees was always to relieve some of the demand for all of us to try to see how hard it is for us to set agendas. So be flexible, be receptive to ideas, and be respectful of the administration's time as always. Give them as much information in advance or questions as you need to, but just respect their time. And I remember we had this document right here, the previous one that was adopted years ago. We spent 7 hours in here going over this policy. It was brutal in here, but there were a lot of wording, a lot of details. Of course, this wasn't just this portion, but it was the whole thing, and it was the policy committee. But we went through a lot of changes. And anyway, so that's the purpose of the committees. If you think you need to evolve or tweak them as time goes on, I think we'll be receptive to that. I don't want you to try to get too focused on one thing and, we can't look at that. That's not in our charter. If it's something that needs to be addressed, then bring it forward. And as I said last time, a lot of this stuff overlaps, of course, with the finance and the budget. We do facilities, and policy has to do with transfers, and it kind of all interweaves and overlaps. So by all means, keep your eyes open, your opinions open, and suggestions on that. All right, thank you all for your work on that. And then, Mr. Ponick, you're going to post it. You're going to work on the posting so it'll be properly. So if quorum shows up, we're not in violation of Open Meetings Act, things like that. So, all right, thank you. With that, we will go to agenda item. Where are we? L, public communication. I don't think we have any further. Is that right? Go to agenda item M, board announcement request for future agenda items. I think we've already set the team of 8. If there's anything else on that. Ms. Weir, did you push?
No, I was actually just going to say I wanted to say that the Westwood boys and girls soccer teams and the Round Rock girls soccer team are all, maybe they're done by now, but they were playing their first playoff, so hopefully they all did well. And for those of you that don't know, I know Mason wants to get to watch in tech, but we have 2 former Mavs that are in the Sweet 16. Tonight, Victor Bailey's playing for University of Oregon, and tomorrow night, Armani Brooks plays for the University of Houston. So go Mavs.
Yeah. That's great.
I've got an update on the soccer if you wanted. The Westwood girls won. Oh, I'm sorry. The Westwood girls lost. The Round Rock girls have already won, and the Westwood boys are tied right now with about, I don't know how many, it's towards the end of the match, so they're tied 2-2.
That's great. Let's see. All right. But I know there's a lot. This gets real busy from now on. There's lots of awards, ceremonies, banquets, recognitions. I'll try to go as many as you can, and we get invited. If you can make it, by all means, go to as many as you can. They're wonderful. we're grateful, very fortunate we have so much to be grateful for on that. So, Dr. Flores, you have a comment?
Yes, just one real quick thing. Round Rock ISD, a point of pride, AAA rating. The latest credit ratings for Moody's and Fitch are now available, and Round Rock ISD has maintained its AAA rating with both agencies, and we remain the only district in Texas to achieve a AAA rating from both agencies. So kudos to staff, kudos to all involved, the community as well, this board and all that make this possible. So I just needed to interject that. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thanks for bringing that up again. All right. With that, we'll go to, we're not going to go into closed session. I don't think so. We'll go to agenda adjournment. With that, it's 9:48. Yes, we're adjourned.